Thanks for entering the crypt with us. We're Bone Patrol. I'm Aaron. We got Tyler.
What's up?
Christopher.
Howdy.
And Max.
Hey.
And today we're going over something called Mel's Hole.
Music by Chris.
In 1997, near the town of Manastash, Washington, a man by the name of Mel Waters sends a fax to Art Bell, who is a radio host for Coast to Coast AM, describing what appeared to be a bottomless pit on his property. This intrigued Art enough that he booked Mel onto his show, introducing the world to what became known as Mel's Hole.
All right.
Yeah. Could you imagine the phone call when Art Bell calls Mel and he's like, hey, about that hole?
Well, let's step back. Can you imagine the facts? Like, you're just... Okay, I'm not too familiar with Coast to Coast AM and the content they provide, but just like getting a fax from me is like, hey, you know what? I got a bottomless hole on my property. You want to talk about it?
Well, I mean, I don't know if you've seen a picture of Art Bell, but he looks like a miniature Italian Steve Jobs who's constantly smoking a cigarette, and he's the type of dude to dig deep on something like that for sure.
So you tell me all you have to do is send Art Bell a fax, like bottomless. He's like, I'm in.
Well, spoiler alert, Art Bell's dead.
May he rest in peace.
Yeah, anyways, but yeah, no, it's... I don't know, I feel like on a daily, he's got to get some weird faxes if he's like running a radio show. Why would he choose interest in this?
I want a copy of this fax. Did he like slip $100 in with it? It's like, you know what? Just
No, he faxed the
he faxed. He
faxes the $100.
He commits a felony and sends counterfeit money to Art. It's like 2 hours. 2 hours is all I need. Let's talk about this hole.
Art would definitely commit a felony.
Yeah, I can see it. If he's a miniature Italian, yes.
Well, I don't know if he is. He just looks like if Steve Jobs and Steve Jobs and like The Godfather had a child.
So you're both claiming that Art Bell is in the mafia.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
Is it illegal to defame a dead person? I don't think so. I think we're good.
I think the turtlenecks he wore defamed him quite enough. So
Defamed himself.
I think we're helping his reputation
So
here.
you're saying he had grounds to sue Burlington Coat Factory.
Yes.
Yep.
Fantastic. Okay. So he sends his fax. Art's like, this is pretty cool. I'm going to have him on my show. Obviously, I don't think they're super close together, so they just schedule a time to do a phone call together. And that's when Mel really, I assume, gets to describe what this hole actually is. For how much information was in those phone calls, you can listen to them all online. I don't think the fax contained all of that.
They're like a 2-hour phone call.
It is a long call.
Yeah.
Well, I assume it was all live.
I don't know for sure, but I would imagine so. I can't imagine that. That's how it probably got so much publicity.
Maybe.
Mel starts out these phone calls by describing the actual physical properties of the hole. He describes the hole as being 9 feet wide with a stone retaining wall that descended 15 feet below the surface. He also stated that no echoes have ever been heard from the hole. And then once again, as far as the eye can see, it appears to be bottomless.
Like, if you yell in it, there's no echo?
It just consumes your voice.
Yeah, okay.
Just don't drop your phone or any child or
do.
Or dead canine.
Yeah.
Interesting you would say that.
Foreshadowing. I didn't say that.
9 feet wide. I mean, that's like a fairly big hole just to have on your property.
Yeah, that's a big hole. Like, you think you'd want to fill it.
Yeah.
Well, if it's bottomless, I mean, couldn't you though just cover like part of it, like at least the top?
Would you just like fall in though?
You'd probably want to put like a grate over, like how they do with wells.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that makes sense. Or like a fence around it.
That's probably why they have the wall, though. So
Like,
just
Well, you know what? He never states how high the retaining wall goes. He just states it goes 15 feet. Wait,
Yeah, so
who went 15 feet down in this hole to build this retaining wall?
Mel climbed down and then climbed back out.
Well, why though?
Hey,
Gotta
Bobby,
know.
can you tie me up? I'm going to rappel down this wall 15 feet and put this wall right here.
You know, maybe it would help a little bit if the wall was 15 feet above the surface.
That would make more sense.
Wait, he didn't build it though, right? Or
No,
did
Mel
he?
didn't. No, he was just
no.
there.
Yeah.
Who built the wall?
Well,
That's
you know,
our question.
Who built it? Why did they build it? Why did they go 15 feet down into this what seemed to be a bottomless hole to build this wall?
Maybe that's why. Like, they hit 15 feet. Like, dude, this is bottomless. We can't go any deeper. It's too much. We're done.
Back in the day, they could only measure to 15 feet in the.
I don't know,
Let's
man.
give us a little more information on at least who owned the hole before. Mel talks about that because Art was curious, like, have you always owned this land? And Mel tells him that the land was owned by another man who lived there for at least 30 to 40 years. And as far as he knows, the hole has always been present. I mean, I'm going to assume the man didn't dig a bottomless pit in 40 years. For decades, though, so at least since the other man owned it, locals have used the hole as a method of dumping unwanted items. Mel also used to just dump his garbage.
I thought he was the unwanted item. The unwanted items. Mel.
The locals would gather together and try to throw Mel in the pit.
Guys, you gotta stop
Mel
doing
being
this.
10 feet wide did not fit. Mel would dump his own garbage in there, and I like how it wasn't until he noticed that the hole wasn't filling up that he's like, this might be bottomless.
Well, so you said it's 9 feet, right?
Wide, yeah.
9. So it's like structurally impossible for it to be bottomless if it's 9 feet wide, right? Wouldn't it just collapse in
You
on
assume it
itself?
just collapsed
Yeah.
in on itself.
Okay, I just clarifying that this hole
Yeah,
is really
no.
as magical as it sounds.
I guess at this point, Mel isn't sure it's bottomless. He's just like, this is just a real big hole. And so the act of throwing his garbage in there is he's like, I gotta find out how deep this thing is.
How much garbage did he have where he's like, this is bottomless?
He threw in multiple, okay, I don't know where he's getting these, like television tubes?
Sounds like high school kids just like doing something, just being like, hey, let's throw this television tube and see what sounds it makes.
Well, and that's exactly what he would do. He would throw them in, and they would never make a sound. And so he's like, well,
Weird.
I wonder if there's like any sort of like statistic around this time of like people's televisions going missing.
In Ellensburg, 50 televisions have gone missing.
1997.
Now, okay, if that wasn't weird enough that Mel was just dumping all of his garbage in this hole and it never filled up, Mel had a neighbor that came and talked to him about the hole, and he had a very interesting experience with this hole. So this neighbor was an avid hunter, and he used hunting dogs to assist him in his hunting. And one day, one of his dogs dies. And this guy determines the best way to dispose of this dog is to trespass on his neighbor's property and throw it in the hole.
So you're telling me?
I don't know why
That
you guys
you
think that's so
threw-
weird.
I guess maybe like in the backcountry, it's like, well, I just threw my dog in the hole and I don't think much of it.
I would do it in the city, just throw it off the overpass.
I mean, honestly, it's like quicker and cheaper than like burying it. It's only the time to dig a
True.
hole.
There's already a bottomless hole.
There's
Might
a
as well
big
throw
one.
it in.
But imagine if you do hit the bottom.
No, what if Mel caught him in the act doing it? He'd be like, what you doing there, Ricky? Oh, I just thrown my hunting dog down here. He did. So,
Well, if you had a big hole on your property and you just saw some dude carrying a dead dog and he just chucks it down there, you probably wouldn't approach him. You'd be like, this dude's gonna throw me in the hole.
Nah, I'm good.
So this guy throws his dog in the hole, and then sometime later he's hunting again in the woods, and he sees a dog chasing after an animal wearing the exact same collar of the dog that he threw in the hole. And this is where Mel is finally like, I gotta find out how deep this hole is. And obviously it has the power of resurrection.
it's like Lazarus Pit.
It is like Lazarus Pit.
This dude throws his dog in a hole, and then like a week later she's running out of the woods. He's like, oh wow, Bingo's alive.
I'm sorry, I'm with Mel on this one. That's not that weird.
Seems fine to me.
I don't know.
But it also just says like animal too with the collar, so could it like transform into something else?
Oh my gosh, that deer has Bingo's collar. I'm gonna shoot it.
Bingo?
Bingo, is that you?
Holy crap, the velociraptor stole my dog's collar. Yeah, so some animal stole his dog's collar. So whatever lives in the pit.
Hopefully a gorilla.
A lot spookier.
Let's say a magical unicorn.
Back in the day, there was bear pits in Germany. What if it was a bear pit? And it was a bear wearing Bingo's collar.
Jeez.
Or it's Mel with the
That's a
collar
huge collar.
It's just male butt naked. He's obviously repelled in once to measure it. He's gonna do it again.
It's like, I like that color. I'm gonna get it.
Well, so to be fair, I don't think Mel actually owned the land at this point. This happened before he owned the land.
Okay.
Did the guy who threw the dog own the land?
No, it was whoever Mel got the land from.
The neighbor.
Yeah.
Neighbor boy.
Why you gotta say it like that?
How Mel would have said it.
After hearing this story, Mel, well, you know what, to be fair, Mel obviously isn't fazed at all that this hole might be bottomless, so I'm sure that a hole having the power of reincarnation, turning a dog into another animal, isn't really past Mel's beliefs. So Mel decides he's going to go experiment and find out how deep this hole is. His first thought was it's probably water at the bottom. So either there's an underwater lake or even more likely an underground river system. So that's why you never find anything, because you throw down there, it lands in the river, and the river carries it down somewhere, and who knows where it takes it. And so that was his first thing. He's like, there's got to be water at the bottom. That's going to explain all of this. And so he goes and he gets a bunch of fishing line. In an attempt to measure the depth of the hole, Mel tied a 1 pound triangular weight, a plumb bob.
Plum Bob.
Plumb bob.
What's a plumb bob?
That's
a
a
1 pound
triangular
triangular weight.
But like,
It's
why?
So he has something to throw down there?
But like,
Because if you don't have anything tied to the string's...
not my question.
He wants to know why it's called a plumb
Oh,
bob.
gosh. Why there's specifically a 1 pound triangular weight known as a plumb bob?
Oh, I don't think the weight, it's just what the weight is. I
Is
think
that just what you would call something on a mechanism like that as a plumb bob? Okay, that's
That's a
okay.
good question. I don't know.
Anyways, carry on.
yeah. So I mean, that's what it looks like. Well, we can't see, but that's what it is.
Oh,
It's just like to measure like vertical.
it looks like a
stuff.
giant ballpoint pen tip.
Exactly.
So Mel used a giant 1 pound ballpoint pen tip, and he tied it to the end of his line, and he would gradually lower it into the hole. Seems like, this is going to be a
Smart
pretty
idea.
easy way to find out how deep this hole is.
I also in one of the I think it was the radio phone calls, he says he got lifesavers, like the candy lifesavers, and put them on the string, and Art Bell was like, okay, like that's bizarre. And he's like, that way if there's water in there and I pull it out, you can see if they're like dissolving.
So what happens is so Mel is an avid shark fisher.
Amazing.
In Washington?
Yeah, they've got the coast.
But isn't this rural land like
Man,
in the middle
he
of
can
Okay,
travel.
you know what? Never said he was a successful shark.
true.
That's
He just loved fishing for shark. And his neighbor also loved fishing for shark. And he tells Mel that you can use this sugar crystal and it dissolves in water. So what they do is they tie it to the line and they just drop it as far down as they can. They bring it up. The sugar crystal's still there. So that's when they start determining maybe there's not water at the bottom of this. The problem is we don't know how far they went down with that. They only tried it like one time and they just determined there was no water. So that's when Mel goes to the plumb bob technique.
Oh, yes.
The next
A
step.
man of taste.
A man of taste.
So because Mel loves fishing for shark, he has...
I'm sorry. Are we sure this isn't just some weird LARPing thing that
Just goes to a local lake and, hey Mel, what you're fishing for? I'm
Great
fishing-
white!
one of them has to dress
okay.
up as the shark and run around the pond?
His neighbor's the shark, Mel's the fish.
Just out there on a rowboat and a harpoon.
Big hooks.
Mel, could you not throw so hard? Like, last time it really left a mark.
Great white!
Wait a second. Is this what the guy from Master of Disguise is based off of? The one in the pond?
That might be
15
it.
kids get into the water. 7 kids get out of the water. Mel Waters. He takes the rest.
Throws him in a pit. They came back to life.
They all got them black eyes. Like Doll size.
So,
Anyways,
Okay.
carry on.
So Mel takes 16 5,000-foot lines.
jeez.
Imagine being the 17-year-old selling him that. You're just like, what the
Sports
freak,
warehouse.
Mel?
You're going after sharks again? No, I've got a bottomless pit. All right, Mel, have fun.
Yeah, I guess, is Mel just crazy?
Maybe.
So Mel takes these 16 lines, ties them end to end, ties the plumb bob onto one end, and the very last line he has on some sort of reel system so he can stop it whenever he needs to. And then he starts just lowering it slowly into the pit.
How long was he there?
Well, he would do this just periodically. He wouldn't do it all at one time.
Okay.
So he would do a little bit, stop, come back the next day, do a little more. He talks about like literally the morning before the interview, he went out there and lowered some more. So he just does it whenever he finds time to go lower a little bit of line down in there.
What else does Mel have going on in his day?
Hunting sharks and dropping
sharks,
line into
yeah.
holes.
Stealing television.
Stealing
viewers.
televisions.
Guess he's got a lot going on.
Mel lowers 80,000 feet of line and never hits the bottom.
How does he know he doesn't hit the bottom? Like, how do we know it's not just piling up at the bottom, it's dry in there?
So he used the reel. So he wouldn't, I don't think he was doing it by hand. I think he would release the reel. So theoretically, when it would hit the bottom, the reel should stop pulling because there's no more gravity pulling the plumb bob down. And therefore the reel would stop. And as far as we know, he would just undo the reel and it would just drop and it'd just keep going. And then he'd stop it, come back tomorrow, do it again.
Still a few televisions, throw a dead dog in.
Get this, that's 15 miles. 15 miles of line that Mel lowered into this hole and never hit the bottom.
Once again, imagine being that kid that sold him
Yeah.
all of that. Yeah, what do you need with 15 miles of line?
I'm gonna have to get my manager. I can't sell this many lines. Hold on for a second, Mel.
My weed dealer just bought all these fishing lines. What's he doing?
Do it, man.
Fair enough.
To put this into perspective, the largest hole we can verify is the Kola Super Deep Borehole. This thing was just 9 inches in diameter compared to the 9 feet that Mel is claiming on his hole. But at 40,230 feet, it reigns as the deepest hole that we know of. It took almost 20 years to reach that 7.5 mile depth. Okay, that's only half of what Mel is claiming, and it took him 20 years to drill this thing, and that is only half the distance or less to the mantle. So this is 0.2% of the distance to the center of the Earth, and at that point they had to stop drilling because they were reaching heats of 325 degrees Fahrenheit. They could not drill any farther down, and it cost them $1 billion to dig this hole.
Is this the hole in Russia?
Yes.
Okay.
What's the width on this hole?
9 inches.
Yeah, 9 inches.
So it's a really small hole?
This thing is tiny.
Because it would collapse.
Yeah.
I
It
feel like
won't
if it was
collapse.
too big.
Well, I was thinking maybe they could do like a funnel shape down, but
That would just, I think the problem with that is you have to continually switch drill bits to
Yeah.
create that. Regardless, they can only reach half the distance of Mel's hole with a fraction of the size, a obscene cost, and it was reaching degrees of 325 degrees Fahrenheit, and they had to stop because their drill bits could not handle it anymore.
That's a big hole.
A lot to
really
take
got
in.
Tyler thinking over here.
I was looking it up, and the other like bigger like natural hole is only 650 feet. It's like a sinkhole.
650 feet.
That's like
yeah.
the biggest. It's Dean's blue hole.
Blue
So we
holes.
talking Dean.
Blue holes are really interesting. They're usually full of water a lot of the times, and because I was wondering if maybe Mel's hole was just a dried up blue hole, but at 80,000 feet, the Mel is claiming. I don't what.
What's happening here?
So he does all of this, and he finally determines this hole has got to be bottomless. It's 15 miles deep. and he has yet to hit the bottom. And that's about, like, as far as we know is how deep the hole goes. Some other weird things, though, about this hole. So Mel noted that he had tried to take his dogs out there because he had a couple dogs, and he'd take them out with him and he'd go to the hole. He said the dogs would never get close to the hole, and if he tried to force them, they would dig their paws into the earth and would refuse to move. And after seeing this behavior, he observed that he never noticed any animals get near the hole.
Yeah, because Randy will chuck him in.
Yeah, right. He saw the first
Randy.
dog thrown in. Like, I'm not going near it.
Nah, man.
So we're assuming this hole is bottomless
Magical.
and radiates some sort of power.
Yeah, it brings. Well, the odd part is it's like the resurrection process where like you come back as something else. It wasn't his dog was back; it was an animal.
Yeah,
with
it's
the
like
same
reincarnation.
Yeah.
Yeah. Bizarre. I kind of want to jump in.
Yeah.
Kill me and I'll jump in.
Well,
Throw me in.
The neighbors, they obviously were all just super interested in this hole, and they would gather together with Mel and throw around theories on how they could discover how deep this hole was. My personal favorite theory was a man suggested they take a cat and just throw it in the hole and listen to when it stopped screaming.
Oh gosh. What's with it with these people with animals? Like throwing live animals.
I'm still not shocked. I throw puppies off the overpass all the time.
Oh man. Chris, you might not want to mention that there. You're
Mel did have an offer from a local that he was willing to be lowered into the hole. And Mel didn't want that kind of liability in case... Because he didn't know what was down there. Didn't know how hot it was. I mean, as we're learning about the Cora super hole, super deep Bora hole, is that what it's called?
yeah.
Something like that.
It reached degrees of 325 degrees Fahrenheit. I mean, you lower a man into that, he's going to die. So
Yeah.
Mel had enough foresight, at least, to realize it was probably really hot. He didn't know if there were, like, heavy gases that were down there, radiation. He didn't, I mean,
You never know.
dead animals
Dead animals.
that apparently weren't dead. He didn't know what was down there. So he wasn't okay with that. So Art asks Mel if he was ever diagnosed with a terminal illness, if he'd be willing to go down the hole. And Mel agreed. He's like, yeah, if I ever got a terminal illness, I would jump in the hole. Which doesn't seem like it would help too much because we wouldn't learn anything if Mel just jumped in the hole and died.
What is Art trying to set up here? He's give him like lead poisoning or something. Well, it's kind of creepy.
So that's about what he tells Art about this hole. And then they end their phone call. Mel then goes home. And the next day, he goes out to his property where the hole is. And there's a bunch of people there waiting for him. And they tell him he's not allowed to come into his property. There's been a plane wreck, and they're cleaning it up.
Randy. There's Randy again, flying his plane.
Yeah. He probably shot down the plane with his rifle.
The shark LARPing went too far.
Yeah.
Well, so
You
I
gotta
mean,
watch
I
out
don't,
for that.
What kind of plane?
I don't know how big Mel's land is, but wouldn't you think you would
like
see a
couple
plane crash? Like,
acres,
is Mel like looking over their shoulders? Like, I mean, I don't see a plane. They're like, it landed in the hole, so that's why you can't see it.
Was it like a commercial airliner?
I would think maybe like a biplane. I mean,
And no one wants to know what happened to the pilot?
Well, Mel obviously he wasn't having this. He's like, there's no way a plane crashed on my property. Let me on my land. And they tell him, you're not allowed on your land, and if you keep trying, we're going to press charges because you are growing illegal plants on your property. That's a felony. You're going to prison. Your other option, Mel, is you can let us use this property. You don't come back to it for a while, and we'll give you a small sum of $250,000 a month.
I'd take it.
Mel accepts. Mel's like, well, I guess I'll take that $250,000 a month, and what does he do with it? Moves to Australia.
All right, didgeridoo's, mates.
What illegal plants was he growing?
I don't have no idea.
My
I'm
guess,
wondering-
marijuana.
Well, so Mel doesn't fight them on that charge, so he must have actually been growing something.
Yeah.
Is that the type of environment where you can grow peyote?
I know you can grow it in like Texas. I think it'd be too humid. It'd be too humid maybe.
Well, yeah, because
too cold. Probably too cold.
Too cold. Well, and also peyote kind of grows. At least what I know, on the border of Mexico.
Do you have something to tell us?
From my experience.
No. If the never mind.
I would think. Well, I would. No, I agree.
It's just really dry desert area.
Yeah, I
it's
think it'd be
dry
too,
desert.
Yeah, it's
Is this
not.
not
and
a
it's-
cactus?
Well, yeah, and it takes a really long time to grow, so it's not something like because I'm sure there it gets hot and it's desert area, but it's not going to be long enough time for a peyote
It's
to
true.
grow.
So where this is taking place in Washington is actually a pretty arid part of Washington, as opposed to some of the more
yeah.
northern parts. But even then, it's not going to be anything compared
Well,
to
also-
the border between Mexico and
And
Texas.
also, they have winters there, so it gets pretty cold there.
I'm just wondering if they sat around like psychedelics, looking down the old watering hole,
Yeah.
like
The local well, and they're like,
And then they,
I
like,
wonder how deep
one of
it
the
is."
dogs ate some of the psychedelics and wandered into the hole, and they just watched.
Uh-oh. It was bingo. Hi again. I think it was shrooms, though. He was growing.
Well, he was growing something because he doesn't fight them on that point. He's like, fair enough, I'll take the $250,000 a month. Either that or he was just smart enough not to fight him because they were offering $250,000 a month. So regardless, he takes the offer and he's going to go live out his lifelong dream of raising wombats in Australia. And these people, we don't know who they are. We're assuming government, but he never actually says if he ever found out who these people were that weren't letting him on his property. But these people, as he says, help him move to Australia. He gets to take his dogs with him. And he gets to take those plants with him. So I don't know what the purpose of that was. But he goes to Australia and he opens up a foundation to help the dying wombat numbers in Australia, which apparently was a lifelong dream of his.
Amazing dream.
I mean, they are going extinct. What I read was he just had a love for animals in general, and for some reason wombats caught his attention because they were going extinct, so he wanted to help because that's just the kind of good guy Mel was.
Yeah.
Not stopping someone from throwing their dog in a pit, that's for sure, but he loves them wombats.
And with $250,000 a month, that seems like something you'd be able to do is move to Australia and start a foundation to help the dying numbers of the wombats, which he does. And that starts in March of 1997 is when he goes out there.
Yeah.
And every month, on time, he gets $250,000 deposited into his bank. And he just continues raising wombats for 2 years up to December 1999. The man just lives in Australia, never comes back until then. He's like, you know what I need to do? I need to go visit family.
Well, so curiously enough, the wombat numbers in that time period actually start to go up.
So you're saying Mel, he was doing it. The
Yeah.
man was doing work.
Mel was saving lives.
Miracle man.
Thanks, Mel.
Maybe he was throwing all the dead ones in the pit.
He would box them up,
Box
ship
them
them
up
back.
and ship them. Hey, Randy, can you throw these in the pit?
Yeah, sure, Mel.
Yeah, sure, man.
That's how Amazon Prime started.
Yep.
Shipping wombats back to America.
And so he does that, and then in 1999 of December, he decides he's going to come back to America to visit some family, maybe check up on the hole. He calls Art Bell, and he's like, I'm back. We're in America. So he gets here, and he gets to America, and the first thing he does, and maybe this is part of why he came back, it seems a really weird reason, but his nephew is moving. So he comes back to America, I guess, to help his nephew move.
He's a family man.
I mean, he's got enough money.
Yeah,
So
that's
he gets on a bus in Tacoma, Washington, and he's got a ticket to Olympia where he's going to help his nephew move. On the journey there, an altercation happens on the bus, and the bus is forced to stop, and police show up on site and are interviewing people on the bus. That includes Mel about what they saw happen. Mel refuses to give a statement, and they're okay with it for some reason. Like it's whatever. And they offer to give him a ride to Olympia because he just kept insisting, I need to get to Olympia. So they offer to give him a ride to Olympia in the police van so he can help his nephew move.
Yeah.
12 days later, Mel wakes up in San Francisco in an alley. Someone want to do that math? How far away Tacoma is from San Francisco?
Let's see.
He wakes up in an alley. He's got the crap beat out of him. He's covered in bruises. He can see on his arms where they had him hooked up to an IV. And he's missing his molars.
You don't need them. Once again, I don't see a problem here. What's so weird? You don't need those.
That's an 11-hour drive.
An
Almost
11-hour drive. And
Jeez.
so he's 11 hours by car away from his home. I'm surprised he very quickly just recognized it was San Francisco. He just wakes up in an alley with his molars missing. He just sees the Golden Gate Bridge. It's like,
Oh my gosh.
I've never been here before. Gets a picture taken. Why take his molars?
You know?
Collateral.
Collateral. Yeah.
Well, so with dental records, can they use any of your teeth? Or is it specifically your molars?
I think they most likely use the molars. Like, that's a preference, but I believe they can do any other teeth. But molars are the most distinct.
So you're saying they took his teeth to put in someone else's mouth, because I forgot the most important part. He was missing the famous Mel Waters homemade belt buckle. So there's another Mel Waters out there is what I'm learning.
Man.
They took his blood. They took his teeth. They took his belt buckle.
And now they're going to take his pride away.
Oh my gosh, they're going to throw it in the hole and resurrect another Mel?
Whatever.
They're going to clone him.
It's just Randy. He's still scrounging around on the property like, here, take his teeth in his belt buckle. You're Mel now. And Randy's just like, yeah, murder a Mel.
You get
So Mel does the first thing that anybody would do, and he calls Art Bell. He's like, dude,
Art,
you will not believe what happened. I'm back in America, and I'm missing my teeth. And so Art hooks him up with his dentist to help him out, and that's where he tells him where he's been, what happened after the show, and that's how they got to where they are now.
Okay. So all this goes down, right? All this crazy shenanigans. But I'd like to point out, in the meantime, nobody has been able to locate this hole. At all. It's just not there.
It's true. Yeah. After the show, obviously people were really interested in finding a bottomless hole that could bring your pets back to life.
Yeah, so there's a lot of people like trying to figure out where this hole is, which introduces a really interesting character into the narrative. Which, whenever you want to talk on that, just let me know.
We'll jump into it right now. Red Elk.
Yeah, Red Elk. So I'm going to use his terminology here. Red Elk is a half-breed.
Can you say that?
I'm
that's racist.
quoting him. I'm just being historically accurate here. He's a half-breed shaman, saying pretty much that he's half white and half Native American. And the interesting thing about him, Red Elk, is he claims to have been to this hole multiple times. Like, all growing up, his family would go to the hole. It was just part of, like, rituals, things like that. He's a medicine man, so he would go and probably use those special plants Mel was growing for his medicine. And so people came to Red Elk to try to get direction to the hole. So he said he was going to lead a bunch of people to this hole. So I think it's a group of 10 people he gets, and they wander out into this rural, probably wooded area, tall grass, following this guy around who's definitely high on something, and he cannot find the hole. And so everyone just like starts to doubt it, obviously, because nobody can find this hole.
No, so are these 10 people, are they like tourists from other countries? Like, I can imagine just like this German guy being, yeah, I want to see the bottomless pit.
Yeah, probably. And Red Elk probably didn't understand a thing he said and just said, all right. And so he started wandering. Some side notes, though, about Red Elk is he's a very, very interesting dude. He's kind of a self-taught shaman, so nothing he does is by the traditional ways. And he claims to be part of a group called the 12 Inner Hyoki, Hyoka. I don't know how to pronounce it. I think it's Hyoka. Which, interestingly enough, Hyoka means clown. So
is this like a league of clowns? Just
pretty much.
Well, listen here. The dude's name is Gerald R. Osborne. If I'm going to a shaman for medicinal reasons, of course, and he tells me his name is Gerald, I'm getting right out of there. I don't trust no Gerald being my shaman.
I don't know what to tell
Could you imagine carrying a child for 9 months to name it Gerald?
R. Osborne?
just gonna add that.
Yeah, so he's a very interesting dude. On several occasions, he's gotten interviewed about this. Just pretty much his experiences with the hole, and he very much believes that it's connected with alien activity, and that's why the government took it over from Mel, took the property.
Roswell again.
Yeah. And on one occasion, he claimed that some young men rappelled down into the hole to then come back out with high-powered alien rifles.
That's so sick.
And that quote-unquote from Mel, he says, "I feel bad for any government worker that shoots at them."
They try to take our rifles away, we blast them with these boys.
So some 15-year-old rappelled into this hole and came out with dual-wielded needlers.
Looking like Master
One of them
Chief.
came out with a banshee.
He
Yeah.
flew a banshee out of there, needler in one hand, carbine in the other.
Yeah.
So instead,
According to Gerald.
so instead of storming Area 51, we should find
And storm. I don't want to say it.
Mel's hole.
Mel's
We should
Storm Mel's hole.
That is not sexual at all.
Raid his hole.
Okay. Well, there's also one last thing I'd like to say, because I did a lot of looking into Red Elk, his beliefs and everything. One last thing you need to understand about him before you can fully grasp the type of dude he was. He claims to have gone on a 69-day fast where all he partook
Nice.
of was vitamins and
I get
juice.
What kind of juice?
What kind of vitamins?
Beats me. I mean, probably like the gummy bear ones, and he
Oh,
just had some
those are the
Tropicana.
Flintstone one.
Flintstone.
Florida's natural.
Probably. And so he went on this fast on the 49th day. He kept having this reoccurring vision that would come to him in about an hour span for 3 days straight about like pretty much the apocalypse, the end of the world. And so he kind of strayed away. With all this attention he was getting, he strayed away from talking about Mel's hole and decided he wants to talk about the apocalypse now. So he has this long list of things that are going to happen. And this was back, I think, in like 2003, that time period. He says this is all going to happen within a year. Looks like we're good still. I tried to contact him, but unfortunately he passed away.
Oh,
God
man.
bless his soul.
Rest in peace,
But-
Red Elk.
So that's the only other person that has been interviewed, that I know of at least, about going to Mel's hole.
Yeah, it's because no one's been there.
I believe
You believe in Mel's hole?
something like it.
A similar thing.
Similar thing. Don't ask.
There
why.
is a lot more information on this. The more Mel talks about it, he does talk a little bit more to Art about the hole and some other weird phenomena surrounding the hole. The whole thing gets...
Fun there.
yeah, the entire thing gets really, really weird. And we can maybe go over it in another part if we need to. But it gets really, really strange.
Yeah. It's just hard because Mel, first off, there's no records of like him.
No, there's not.
Yeah, it's a
It's a-
fake name.
Yeah, he's using an alias.
Because was it Art who checked with the Census Bureau right there in the area? And they're like,
Yeah.
and they're like, there's nobody in this area
By the
named
name-
Mel Waters.
Yeah.
Because they use like taxpayer information or something. I don't
Or
know.
just tax evasion.
Tax
Yeah.
evasion. I don't believe in it.
So as far as we can know, Mel Waters doesn't exist.
And then the only other person who claims to have been there, quote unquote, is a half-breed clown.
The
Shaman
too.
clown.
Shaman clown.
Sorry, my bad. Half-breed shaman clown, as if that makes it any better.
Who started practicing medicine at 10 years old.
Yes, he's from his website. I'm gonna read a little excerpt from his website. He says, "Red Elk at 17 already considered fearless with 7 years medicine training behind him."
Also, there's a picture, and he looks a lot like Elvis. So he's like a half-breed Elvis.
So what he is he's half clown, half Elvis, 100% shaman.
100% clown shaman.
Yeah, so there's not a lot of reliable sources here, but I agree. I think the next episode we're going to dive into the more obscure.
Okay. As it sits now, where do you stand with Mel's Hole? Max, what do you think?
I think it's a hoax.
You think it's a hoax?
Okay, give us...
If I want to be skeptical, it's a big magic hole. It's moving around. That's why people can't find it.
Okay, here, give me this. Give me this, Max. Give me your honest opinion, and then give me an opinion if it differs, if you're just going to believe it's real.
Like, honest opinion,
Honest opinion. We'll go honest opinions first. Max, what's your honest opinion?
it's not real. He just liked the attention of calling stuff in and made up a whole big story, and then that was it.
Christopher?
So I think that there is a hole on the property, but it's going to be not nearly that big, and it's going to be either some sort of old well or like watering hole, and they probably did drugs and sat around it, and it wouldn't surprise me if some dude actually threw his dog in there, and it's just not deep enough, and the dog just crawled back out. I'm like, dude, what the frick?
Bro.
Just killed my dog. Yeah, no, I think the same thing with, like, Chris. I think there is a hole, but it's, like, it's not bottomless, and I believe that they were definitely doing drugs. Like, you know, living in that backwoods part of, like, Washington, what else is there to do?
I don't know, you tell me. What do you do?
I don't know. Do drugs and look at holes.
Nice.
I agree. I think the whole thing's made up. I don't think there's even a hole. I don't think Mel Waters is real. I think Art Bell designed this whole thing for his radio show. Yeah. It was all just a publicity stunt for him. Thought it was a really good story. People loved it. I'm wondering if even he meant for it to be kind of like a, not quite a ghost story because it's not scary.
An urban legend.
An urban legend that just kind of went too far with people actually looking for it. Maybe that's what he wanted because it doesn't exist. And he picked an area that was near a town but urban enough that you couldn't really, at the time anyway, back in, when was this? 1997, really verify too easily if there was actually a hole out there.
I wonder if we can find the statistics for his viewership. Maybe that's when the next call came in.
I'll note it down. We can look it down.
Definitely.
Popularity.
So Max, let's just assume it's real. Let's assume this whole story is legitimate. What's your explanation?
I think it's a magic hole that can move, and the government moved it away.
The government moved it.
It's like that SpongeBob episode where they pushed the bottom away. The FBI just picked it up and moved it.
The FBI was like, let's push Mel's hole somewhere else.
They're catching on too good, and so they just took it and just moved it.
Okay, question. How do you push a hole? Do you have to get in it?
You dig a bigger hole around it.
And then push that hole.
You guys are ignoring a really important documentary that talks about this type of thing. Who Framed Roger Rabbit?
Oh man.
So you just pick it up.
Yeah.
Just pick it up and just move it.
Yeah.
Big helicopters and stuff, you know?
I don't know. No.
All right. A magical hole that the government moved.
Mm-hmm. They left it there by accident.
Oh shoot, man.
Who was the president around that time?
1997, so that would be Clinton.
I don't know.
Yeah,
right.
because
It was Clinton.
Clinton, where'd you put the hole?
Dude, you left the hole.
Monica, where's the hole?
Wrong hole.
All right, Christopher, assuming the hole's real, what's your explanation?
So assuming this hole is real, so I'm like it's Lazarus Pit from like DC Comics style. Like you throw something in, gets reborn, get brought back out type of thing. If this hole is real, I'm just gonna have to guess that it collapsed under its own pressure from how deep it is. At some point, like it just collapsed.
So, was it continually getting deeper, or do you think it just was slowly becoming structurally unsound and eventually collapsed?
I think it just slowly became structurally unsound.
So, do you think it was actually bottomless?
I wouldn't say it's bottomless, but I mean, because if it's bottomless, that means it has to go straight through the earth. Like it comes out the other end. Like some kid in China could fall through it back to the USA and have citizenship.
I mean, that's how it works.
But I think I don't think it's bottomless. I just can't trust that the measuring technique used was proper. I think it was probably a really deep hole. If this is real, if it was a really deep hole and it just collapsed in on itself over time. Either from like maybe when the government took it over, they were like doing construction type things around it and it just made it structurally unsound and collapsed. Something along those lines.
Yeah. I think kind of there is a hole. And when the government took it over, I think, didn't they put like a military base or like a military training ground there?
We can talk about that next time, but I'm pretty sure if I'm just going off of what I kind of read, they try to get aerial footage of the area art in Mel, and they find out that that's a very specific location where Mel claims the hole is like whited out on the map because of military reasons.
That makes sense. Yeah, so I think somehow the government got wind of that like magical hole, and they're like, we need that hole. And so that's why, they swarm the place. They tell Mel, hey, you can't be here. We'll give you this sum of money. Leave. And so I think they're maybe doing kind of like an Area 51 where they're doing like tests, like maybe military tests, maybe like scientific tests. I don't know.
High-powered alien rifles from
Yeah.
the army.
I agree. I think that's when they really, really got into it, when they heard high-powered alien rifles came out of this hole.
Oh, yeah.
Now, so if we're going to assume it's real, and obviously Red Elk was telling the truth, this was a location for aliens.
So it's like another Roswell.
We're talking the gremlins that live...
Is that Randy? Randy and Mel?
in the center of Mars. They use a tesseract to come to Earth. Okay? These are the same gremlins that collapsed Atlantis, that hid El Dorado, that did other crazy stuff like those big triangles down in Egypt.
Big triangles.
Yeah.
These are the same gremlins that did that. They dug holes into our Earth. I'm sure there's more, and Mel's going to claim there's more. We'll talk about that in part 2. And why did they do this? Swiss cheese. These gremlins.
Swiss cheese.
Hold out. Listen. These gremlins, they live off a very specific diet of moon rock, which, as I learned from Wallace and Gromit, is also cheese.
Oh.
So these gremlins eat cheese. And their favorite was Swiss. And if the moon was made of cheese, then the earth could be made of cheese, and all you had to do was drill holes in it.
Huh.
And the government, hold on.
Oh.
You ever heard of government cheese?
Oh, my God.
The government knew if they could control these holes, they could control the welfare state.
All I know is one thing. You gotta dig them holes.
Wait, is that Greenland?
Yeah.
I think we covered it.
Yeah.
I think that's it for part 1.
That
Part
is
one.
Mel's Hole Part 1. In preparation for Part 2, where things get real juicy.
Tasty.
Max loves him some juicy hole. And on that note, we're going to get on out of here. I'm Aaron.
I'm Max.
I'm Chris.
I'm Tyler.
And we're going to give you guys some goodnight kisses.
Hey yo, it's Crispy Chris. I'd like to thank you all for listening. Don't forget to check us out on social media. We got Twitch, we got Instagram, we got YouTube, we got Twitter. Check it out. Thank you.